was fine. Harburg was fine, but Kalen looked great.
I always, Ravi and I, we picked this apart every which way, but Sunday before, like for the month. And I felt like we kind of compared it to the draft going into this deal. And we prefaced the whole thing by saying, this time, I don't think the coaches are playing possum because this was way before spring started, if they don't have anything definitive coming out of spring on the quarterbacks. And you're going to get the collective eye roll from the fan base or angst, one of the two, right? Because I don't know if we trust them enough to go, oh, you mean it's really not declared? Because just what you said, it's football, but it's not taking guys to the ground. It's not these intricate blitz packages. It's not pressure packed 3rd and 7. And a lot of guys can flourish in these sorts of settings. And you also don't really know about quarterbacks until they actually play. So is it easier to see why they haven't been overly one way or another at the quarterback position and take them at their word?
Yeah, it's easy to see, and for me, there was clarity before the spring. I didn't expect that Nebraska was going to say 7 practices into March and April that Dylan Raiola has got the nod to start against UTEP. That's not really the way to do it. It's not really the way to do it with a true freshman, and no matter what his name is, and certainly not the way that I expect Matt Rule and Marcus Satterfield and Glenn Thomas to do it with a true freshman. Last year, the last couple of years, you can look back on it. And Nebraska's had quarterbacks who came in as mid-year transfers, Casey Thompson and Jeff Sims. And Thompson was named the starter before he ever took a snap in practice at Nebraska. Mark Whipple did that on the first day of media availability, and it might have been February, if not early March. And then it wasn't a whole lot different with Sims last year. When Sims signed with Nebraska in December of 2022, right after Matt Rule was hired, it was apparent from Rule's comments that he was likely the guy. Not to say that they named him the starter right then. And also, you can compare that situation to Dylan Raiola, and everybody but the coaches has said that he's going to be the starter, and said that from the day that he committed and signed with Nebraska. But that's a very different message than what you get out of Lincoln. And I think that's healthy. That's important. You need to have competition. He's not taking a snap of college football, and he needs to go out and do everything that it takes to win that job and show that he's capable of being the starter. And if he doesn't, then the whole Dylan Raiola experience maybe doesn't start on August 30th. Maybe it starts a couple weeks later. But I still expect that's going to be the case. I think that his talent is going to win him that job. But we've got to see it happen before we're ready to analyze and make predictions about how it will go.
We're talking with Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Mitch, DB and I talked a lot yesterday about how different, at least in DB's eyes and mine as well, that Daniel Kaelin has looked from high school to now in spring practice with Nebraska. Obviously, he struggled some last year, has looked really good in camps and other places, but probably didn't have the senior year he wanted to have. How much impact can just this short amount of time, I mean, he's been there a couple months really, have in terms of the coaching difference, whether it's just the learning styles or whatever it is for Daniel Kaelin? Like, how much impact can that have in such a short period of time? Because anecdotally, it appears to be dramatic.
Well, if he's playing extremely well and picking up the offense, hitting receivers the way that we saw in a very small window on Tuesday, if that's what he's doing the entire spring, and then he's also getting that done in the meeting room, and I know that Nebraska's happy with the way that he handled himself in the interview setting last week. Again, that's a small thing, but
wait,
it's part of being a quarterback.
Excuse me here, Mitch. I'm sorry, but is it so when you say that isolated? Yeah, that's kind of small. But could I convince you? And I'm not selling anybody. I'm just trying to put the growth and the development together in terms of the chain. How about if you go back to how he handled the whole Dylan Raiola commitment versus coming back into the fold from Missouri and still continuing to champion Nebraska's recruiting class? That's a microcosm of his. That's a microcosm of his personality too, right? Maybe he was showing us more about who he really was than we were really to give it credit for, because we didn't love his senior year.
I think he showed us a lot going back a year ago. It was a year ago this time when the writing was on the wall. Well, even longer than a year ago. You're talking like February of 23 when there was writing on the wall that Raiola was serious about Nebraska, and Daniel didn't want to wait anymore, and he didn't burn any bridges. He handled things diplomatically. He committed to Mizzou. He said the right things. He handled that the right way. And then later on, way down the road, when Dylan committed to Georgia, actually you're into May at that point, he handled it very well again, and in how he switched his commitment from Missouri to Nebraska and immediately became the champion for Nebraska's recruiting efforts, and was, I think, the instigator in that June push for Nebraska to secure the vast majority of its class. He was on campus every weekend helping recruit offensive and defensive players. And yeah, I think that's all very much known and not forgotten by the Nebraska coaches. And then you fast forward to December and the way that he handled Raiola coming back surprisingly at the end. And, he took a couple days, Danny did, to think about things. But in the end, he came out of it looking very good. And now here he is in the spring, practicing well. So yeah, at that point, I do think, Damon, you're looking at a larger series of events than just one Tuesday in practice where he hit a couple passes. They're happy with Danny. They like what he's doing. Fact of the matter is, they like what Dylan's doing too. And they really like how he looks. And they've got an interesting situation. I don't even know if it's a situation, but it's an interesting dynamic and a comparison between the two. And, I think at this point, and someday you probably won't be able to say this, but I think at this point, it couldn't have worked out any better with these two quarterbacks. We're only at April 11th, though, so there's a long way to go.
Mitch, it's interesting that you said that, because I've been thinking a lot about the lack of quarterback competition we've had at Nebraska for the last 12 years almost. I mean, it pretty much went straight from Taylor Martinez to Tommy Armstrong to Adrian Martinez, all as long-term 3 to 4 year starters. And if I'm not misremembering, there was never really a guy that challenged.
It just depends on how you felt about the Jebbia Martinez thing, but considering Martinez was handpicked.
And then Jebbia bounced before the start of Adrian's freshman year.
Yeah.
I mean, there really hasn't been a competition seemingly to what we could be in store for. You kind of said this might have worked out better than anyone even planned. Is it possible that this ends up making both guys better? Because I think the lack of competition in the quarterback room has actually been a problem.
Well, we saw what happened between the freshman and sophomore year for Martinez, and he had to go back and kind of eat the body type change. And I mean, how few reps that he actually got live. There's something to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a real competition in the spring, in Frost's first spring, with Tristan Jebbia and Martinez. Tristan, he transferred out like 2 days before the season started, so that played out, and Martinez won the job, and then the competition fizzled, and there was really never any more competition for Adrian the rest of his time at Nebraska, which, yeah, I think you can make a case that wasn't great. It has been a long time. It would probably go back to Taylor Martinez redshirt freshman year when he somewhat surprisingly won the job in a battle with Zach Lee. But at that point, you think back to the way the previous year went with Zach Lee offensively, and you had a dynamic guy in Martinez. So anyway, that was a long time ago. I do think that these competitions, when they're real, that they do benefit everyone involved. they have the ability to benefit everyone involved. We'll see what this is. I don't think we even know what this is at this point, because right now the competition at really every spot in Nebraska camp is kind of baked into what they're doing. You see it with the spring league, you see it with the way that they structured mat drills and commitment week and everything that Nebraska, the way that it structures the offseason, they're just creating competition everywhere. But for it to be a true competition, I think you've got to have a couple of players or 3 players who are on somewhat equal footing with their ability and their talent. And, we'll see if that's what we're dealing with here. I think in August, it'll be more clear. Right now, throughout the spring, the way the spring game is going to be staged, I don't know that you're going to have a great sense of whether this is a competition or it's just an inevitability for Raiola to get named the starter.
Mitch, let's take quarterbacks out of it because we talk about quarterbacks all the time. So I want to kind of focus on some other position groups here. Is there a position group, maybe excited is the wrong word, but that you kind of look at the potential of and you kind of look at what they're bringing back and you say, that group could be really, really good?
Well, I'll give you 2. One that I expected to be really good, and then one that now I'm kind of looking at it and maybe reassessing. I'll start with that one, and it's the wide receivers. I think there's more there than what Nebraska had a year ago. Quite a bit, potentially quite a bit more. And that group was just blasted by injuries last year. But the way that Nebraska remade it, and I think we're going to look at Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nair in a few months and say that Nebraska went 2 for 2 in the transfer portal on that group. I think both of those guys are going to do good things for the Huskers in 2024. Not to say that like they're both all Big Ten or anything like that, but like they're going to be in the rotation at the top, close to the top of the rotation. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And I'm again seeing a small sample size here, but from what we've heard and seen on Banks and what we've seen now on Nair, I was impressed with him.
He's unbelievable
Tuesday.
right now.
Yeah,
I don't think you're far off at all.
Yeah, I think both those guys are going to do good things for Nebraska. And I think Barney is somebody who can play as a freshman. And Demetrius Bell, I've heard about a lot now. He's dinged up right now and wasn't practicing on Tuesday, but it's not a major injury. And he's electric with the ball in his hands. And then you've got the 4 guys. Well, he's one of them. The other 3 guys who were true freshmen a year ago. And Jalen Lloyd has taken his abilities and game to the next level. Malachi Coleman has the opportunity to do that when he gets back out.
We've had all these conversations about wide receivers, and Coleman hasn't even been.
There's a lot.
We haven't had to say anything.
Jaden Doss can be somebody that really helps them. Alex Bullock can be a reliable guy in doing, and if you put him in a role where he's doing what he's best doing, then I think he helps your offense more than last year when they asked him to do more than what is his strength. So that's a group that I would say has kind of snuck up on me as having the possibility of being very good or better than expected in 24. And then the defensive line, which I knew going into camp was a strength of this team. I think it's the best position group on the team, just like the most fleshed out talent, size, experience. They've got a little bit of everything or a lot of everything in some cases.
That's Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Mitch, we appreciate you joining us bright and early this morning. Really good stuff there that I'm sure we'll dig into the rest of the show. Enjoy the rest of your day and your lovely little whiskey tasting room you got going on there. I love it.
Thank you. Thanks for making room for me, guys.
I appreciate you, Mitch. Thanks. That's Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Coming up next, lots to dig into there, as well as reset the show.
A lot else going on the show. That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Hey, we're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube.
Sounds a lot more professional. We did this in backwards order.
That's true. That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla. We are here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on the Pillar Exterior stage. DB is going to put way too much salt in his drink, as he always does.
I am not.
And I'm going to get PTSD of gargling with salt water when I was a kid to
Yeah, old school, right? That was the remedy.
Yep. Trying to. Oh, you got a sore throat? Oh, gargle with Well, never mind. I feel fine. I'm good. I'm good.
That and Robitussin. Right.
So the other thing was, and this might be an India thing.
Castor oil?
No, my dad would make fennel tea.
Yeah. So
I think that's an India thing.
no, because do you know the only time I use fennel?
When you're sick?
No.
When?
Do you know what fennel is in that I absolutely
Sausage?
Yes.
Yeah, fennel sausage.
Yeah. Like
so
breakfast, you can put it in breakfast sausage.
by itself,
and it is fantastic.
By itself, it's quite bad.
It stinks.
And it tastes like black licorice a little bit if you
yeah.
bite into it. But my dad, this is why I don't like hot beverages.
Is that why you grew up on? Is that why you love Sambuca? I'm kidding.
Rude. No, so
that is a Zoe response if I've ever heard it.
well, I mean, you know, I'm a child, so
rude. I'm like,
what's it, Zambuca milkshakes?
yeah, I'm sure if you put that in milkshakes, you'd be knocked. People light Zambuca on fire. Yeah, it's mildly disgusting.
horrifying. What's worse, that or Everclear?
Oh, given the choice, I'll take the Everclear.
Man,
I can't go anywhere near black licorice.
Oh no, it's terrible.
Yeah.
But so my dad would make.
I can gut the gasoline.
Dude, it's so bad.
Oh, I know.
My friend's wife, one time he had a holiday party, and so we were doing shots of peppermint schnapps, which is not great in and of itself.
Equally disgusting.
But it's fine. Like I know what to expect. I know what I'm getting, but it's just a clear alcohol, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, as a joke, she switched mine out for Everclear.
Yeah, that's not funny.
After the first shot, I almost got sick instantly. Like the moment it hit my stomach, you're expecting peppermint and you get paint thinner.
Yeah, shocker.
And
that's not a good friend. Are you guys still?
Yeah, we're cool, but it was.
Yeah, we'd have to have some speaks.
It might be the meanest thing she's ever done to me.
Yeah, that's tough.
I'm not a fan.
We have to reevaluate our positions
It
in
was.
life.
It was not great. It's a mean thing to do to people.
It is.
Anyway, I don't know how we got on that. But yeah, so my dad would make fennel tea when we get sick. And so every hot beverages now remind me of being sick.
I don't drink anything hot.
I can do a hot cocoa. That's it.
Nope.
I generally don't.
I'm out. I drink because I'm thirsty or I need it. So I just don't know that coffee or tea or anything else fits that bill. I'm out.
I'm drinking to try and stay awake in the morning with my energy drinks.
I've been reading all these reports on some of these energy.
Oh, they're
drinks.
terrible.
They're not.
You.
They are not what people think.
I'm here for a good time, not a long time, DB.
Sounds like, dude. That is a total Mosman line right there. That's Oklahoma Tyler.
That's why we get along.
Yeah,
that's my guy.
He's talking about like savings and stuff. Well, for what? For what?
Listen, I like having a little bit in savings, but I'm not one of those people. Like, there's a lot of people that used to be in my life that are all about like the Dave Ramsey thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, you eat rice and beans and save up. And it's like, why would I want to be rich when I'm old? Like, what am I doing at 65, 70? Like, I'm enjoying the money.
You could be a star on TikTok.
I'm enjoying the money now.
Well, you're already ahead of the game because you don't have any littles.
100%. Speaking of which, our guy, the leader, the favorite for the Masters.
Yeah.
Scotty Scheffler, right?
Oh, this is wild.
His wife is pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
He said yesterday, I think, during all the press, whatever, and the par 3, which I like, and
I can't believe that's your thing. Now, the cool part is the kids. But I know that's not your thing. So why do you like the par 3?
To me, it's like a 3-point contest. I just like seeing it. I like seeing the skills and just because they do goofy stuff and they try and skip it across the water. Like, I just like it.
Okay. I mean, hey, to each his own.
Yeah.
I watched the Masters live last night and was thoroughly entertained.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Just
on the golf channel, they were yelling at each other.
Old staunch guys like talk about the course and Chambly, who was notoriously anti-Tiger.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's his most famous kind of
like
on-air battles and stuff. Now, but they have particular personalities. They have, since these things were on mainstream television. But Chambly was talking about not lengthening the courses, make it shorter.
Mm-hmm.
He said, to make it more democratic and just to see them go back and forth. And I was just laughing. Number one, because of his delivery. He had a little Ravi to him where it was like.
So he was an a-hole?
That's a little harsh.
That's what you meant, though.
But I mean, my man was like bothered, right? And he kept talking over his guys, and he was thoroughly pissed. But
Like a little condescending. Is that the right word?
I got super snark. And I got to thinking, I was like, shorten the course. I mean, this is Augusta.
Mhm.
I mean, what do they want to do? Run around and just play all par threes? And then I had to laugh to myself on the couch because I was like, oh, that's something Ravi would enjoy. he's king of the par threes.
I love
man.
par threes. I used to play par threes all the time.
Like over there, like right off a center. Or?
Yeah, I'd play the one off of center. I'd play Westwood. I'd go play Elkhorn Ridge. I'd go play Warren Swigert down on Maple.
It's right just down the corner from. So Coach Huffman and I keep calling him. He wasn't Coach Huffman then. He was just Mike or Huffy. But we would like go on that creek and
Huffy
get,
like the bikes.
and get He had a cool one too. But we would go down there and get golf balls.
Yeah. So I used to
and we would sell them back. We'd trade them for like snow cones and back then that was like chewy sweet sprees.
Oh yeah.
Sprees were a thing.
I used to
man.
mess with
So,
sprees.
like that's what we would do. But yeah, Warren Schweigert, that's my brother used to work there.
So I used to play part because I like golfing.
Mhm.
I don't like spending 5 hours of time doing basically anything. Right? Like you go play 18, it's 4 or 5 hours. Like it's a huge part of your day. I don't understand how people with kids ever get away with it. I don't get it at
That's
all.
usually the first thing to go.
Yeah.
Stress wise, when guys and gals can't go golf once they start a family.
Yeah.
It's just
I just can't justify the time.
I'll be curious to see because Schaefer likes to play golf for a peace of mind.
Mhm.
I'll be curious to see how he navigates that because that's typically one of the first things to go.
So instead of playing 18 all the time, I would just go to these par threes, and I got down to where I could knock out a par three in like 75 minutes, walking it, going the 9. And so I'd go play par threes 2-3 times a week, have a grand old time. So my like iron game was on point. I can't drive to save my life still to this day. But
To this day, you and Deontay Wilder.
me and Wilder to this day.
I get it.
No, but our guy Scotty Scheffler, his wife is pregnant. He said if she goes into labor, he's leaving. And I'm thinking two things here. Number one, that has to affect the betting odds. Has to.
Right. Especially as the clear fade.
Yeah, he's like plus
and a
300.
guy says, "Hey, I could bounce at any time." I don't know what I would do.
See, that's what I wanted to ask you too, because you're a dad. I'm not.
It's a relative term.
You have fathered children. I have not,
Correct.
that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
At
least that you know of.
that nobody's told me.
Yep, don't get that knock. It's tough.
Not a phone call I'm looking to get. But so, because me, I'm like, okay, listen, I probably need to stay and finish this thing.
I would guess that's how you would feel. I don't know. It just depends. Like if
Does it depend on which kid it is? If it's first versus third?
You'd have to go back and explain that later. So no.
Okay. Because I've heard other people.
But I would say this is kind of double talk, but not. I wouldn't discern between the second and the third, but the first is definitely a standalone.
Sure, yeah. Like if it's your first kid,
Yeah, you know what I mean?
it makes more sense to me to be like, I gotta go.
And it depends on like, did you marry somebody that says it's okay, no big deal, but really it is a big deal?
Or somebody that actually doesn't.
Or
think it's a big
somebody
deal.
that says, no, I want a nice gift and it matters.
Yeah.
Right? Because if it's not a guessing game and they shoot you straight,
that helps a lot.
well, at least it lets you know where you're at.
Yeah.
For me, I just don't know if I would be able, especially in a sport like golf, where it's, I mean, you constantly have to stay second to second.
Locked in.
I mean, locked.
Yeah.
I just don't know. You know what I mean? But I'm also.
Does it matter where you're at in the standings? Like if he's leading this thing by a couple strokes on a Saturday, and he gets the call.
Like if he's
versus
if he's -7 halfway through the third round and he's up 5 strokes,
you gotta fish that thing.
And he says he's bouncing.
You gotta finish that thing.
I wonder if Vegas has a contingency if he does
like you
withdraw.
It's like a no bet basically.
Yeah,
maybe. Because all I'm saying,
they can do that.
Yeah, 100%. They basically do whatever they want.
I mean, and this is coming from a guy. Zoe was born on a Tuesday. We were in Des Moines for a basketball tournament on Sunday.
Yeah,
and we all went. So don't let me kid you like I'm Mr. Family Man. I wanted to see everybody.
Well, you all went, so kind of. That's TBM Ravi, Lulla, more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up hour number one here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. I wanted to get into defensive line here a little bit because we talked to Mitch about this, and I wanted to get the positional breakdown of defensive line yesterday. Show got away from me a little bit.
No way. I got to tell you this still with my butt.
Yeah.
Remember I told you, like, it depends on how well you how honest your spouse is with you.
Mhm.
My buddy is. Every time I go fishing, she says it's okay. When I get home, it was never okay. That's the worst.
No, it's the worst because you're playing Battleship. You're just shooting at a target you can't see.
I'm telling you,
I'm not about that.
And there's a lot of other things I can handle and deal with. The guessing game or the inconsistency of not shooting me straight,
it's the worst.
Will never fly.
No,
because you can't ever beat somebody's mind.
Yeah. You can never, and you always feel like you're on eggshells, and you can never be right. It's honestly, it's the same thing with, and this is a weird analogy, but it's the same thing with coaching, right? If coaches don't clearly set their expectations of what they want from you, then you're always playing a guessing game and you're trying to meet their mood, which is a disaster.
And it's funny too, because in relationships, a lot of times with athletes and non-athletes or two athletes, a lot of times conflict resolution boils down to those points.
Yeah.
Like, and sometimes when you have two athletes, it can be uber tough.
Yeah.
Even though you have commonality in terms of, okay, you're used to somebody telling you, this isn't good enough right now. This is what I need you to do in order to be better. Or, hey, you're pretty good at this. Don't rest in that. Stay on the game. Like things like that people that haven't competed have no frame of reference.
Yeah, you have to go through a good amount of counseling if you haven't competed for that to be a thing that you can handle.
We just had this conversation yesterday, 2 days ago at the dinner table. In a couple meeting rooms, there are a couple of coaches that have a specific kind of delivery. And it was like, ooh, that sounds harsh. And Caleb was like, I mean, that's just being coached. And immediately I perk up. I'm like, yes, that's how I feel. Like, but if you're never in that arena, if somebody says that about your skill sets or the way you look, or you need to get in shape, or like it can be traumatizing. But at the end of the day, the more consistency there is in the message from the coaches, like you at least know what you're dealing with.
You at least know where you stand.
Yeah.
And you may not like the delivery. You may not love the feedback, but at least you know where you stand with them. You might not even agree with them.
Dude, but
at least you know.
Totally me and my dad. Totally.
How, in what sense?
Because, and he said this early, and I didn't get it until probably it's late in elementary. So early but late. It's probably 5th, 6th grade. And he would always say, don't ask me the questions you don't want to know the answer to. You know, because he would say some things, and I'm like, man, but I don't feel good. Or I don't want to go. Or, man, that helmet is ugly. I'm not wearing that. Or those shoes look cheap.
Yeah.
You know, and he would say things like, well, you can go with Velcro, or you can go barefoot, or, you know, the time I forgot my helmet at home and I didn't want to wear the leftover. And he's coaching. We're at the Gladiators, and sure enough, man, I sat in the car and watched practice because there was no contingency plan. This is what I told you. It's up to you to deal with it or not. You forgot your helmet at home. This is how it's going to go down. And I used to resent that. And it's crazy because over time, I'm exactly that way. Because I think I've convinced myself that it works. So if Coach Coop can say, I'm not going to give that example. If he can be that direct, and you as a player who's trying to show that you have command of the skill and it's not good enough, and he tells you why it's not good enough, and it's for the whole room to hear, if that's the culture, that's the culture. At least there's no, do I, don't I? Like, you know, if you raise your hand, you know what's at stake.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you don't raise your hand, you know what's at stake.
Right.
So it's like,
well, and
you know where you're at.
And it's interesting that you bring up Coach Cooper too, because there's also a part of it, especially when, whether it's kids, whether it's new in a relationship, whether it's with coaching, where it's on the person delivering on the information at some point to understand, oh, this isn't landing the way I want it to. Right. So like I was I was talking
That's
to.
where I tell you his discernment is key.
Yeah.
Coach Rule, unbelievable discernment.
Well, and so I was talking to our friend Avery over at Hurrdat Sports, who was down at practice on Tuesday, and she told me the story about Coach Cooper, and they were doing this scoop and score drill, right? And he kept
we stole that one.
And he kept
Part
saying,
of the turnover circuit.
He kept saying, "Step to the side."
Yeah.
And so he's telling somebody, "Hey, step to the side and then go."
Yep.
Step to the side. So he's saying it to every single guy. None of the guys are doing it the way he wants to do it. And so he rips one guy for it, and then he watches about 10 more guys do it the wrong way, and he's saying, "Step to the side, step to the side, step to the side," every single time. And then at one point, and this is because Avery was watching, he goes, "Hey, let me tell you what I mean, but when I say step to the side," because it was clear
they weren't getting it.
that whatever he meant was not what they were hearing, right? Because you can't hear somebody say step to the side 100 times in a row and not just be so annoyed that you're going to step to the side or do whatever you think step to the side means. Like my first week playing college basketball, we're playing pickup ball with the returners, whatever. And my point guard, who I love to death, I ended up coaching under him for about 10 years. My point guard kept telling me, "Show on the screen, show on the screen, show on the screen." We're playing defense. "Hey, show, show, show." Finally, after about 10 times, I'm like, "Man, I don't know what the you mean when you say show." And he goes,
"Wait a minute. You said that out loud?"
"Yeah."
Like the F word?
"Yes." At Nebraska Christian College. It didn't go over.
What is wrong with you?
I'm a little loose.
Hey,
I go, "I don't know what you mean." And he goes, "Oh, all right. This is what I mean when I say show." And I was like, "Oh, I call that a hedge." And he's like, "I call it a show." And I was like, "Cool, we're good."
So you know what's funny about that? Same thing. It was a particular, and again, it happened to be DBs. And I felt kind of bad because it was a younger guy. He had to do the rep. We got to about 7-8 times in a row. And it is a physical drill.
Yeah.
It is a block destruction drill. You got to bring your hands and wrap up. And it was so subtle. Hey, not hop, hop. We do short, long. He kept saying it over. Hey, not hop, hop, not hot, hop. Coach Cooper stopped talking. Isaac Gifford was the next guy in line. He kept saying it over and over. And after like the fourth time, Gifford was the one to say, "Do it again." Coach Coop didn't have to say a word. He said, "No, do it again." "Hey, no, do it again." "No, not like that. Do it again." Then Gifford demoed it. "No, do it again." And I'm like, you know what? Here's the deal. Not only did said player receive it, Gifford he took the pressure off his coach because he's an extension of his coach.
Yeah, because at a certain point as a coach,
that's what you want.
Not only is that what you want because they're taking ownership of the standard, right? But also, it's really hard to not look like a jerk when you have to tell the same guy to do the same rep because he's messing it up 8 times in a row. And you still have to do it if your guys aren't ready to take that ownership yet. But then then you have to go really intentionally back to that player and build them back up because whether you intended to or not in that moment, you were tearing them down or it felt like you were tearing them down. So the fact that Gifford goes and takes some of that pressure off of Cooper is an enormous thing.
It's unbelievable
for the temperament of the team.
I had to get some bottled water from Costco the other day. It was right after I had Nebraska gear on. So a guy was coming, I was leaving. I was in there all of 12 minutes. I went and said hi to my girl Lucy, who is like the best self-checkout person ever. Never makes me take anything big out of the cart. She's like always asking about she's just cool. But anyway, so I'm leaving, he's coming, and the guy was like, "Hey, he said something about when to report, and he goes, 'Hey, I'm such and such. I'm good friends with Dave Jones.' I was like, 'Oh yeah.' I said, 'Good guy.' And we started talking about Christian. And he's talking about recruiting, and I said, he's going to be a tricky recruit because he's not your average. He reminds me of Caleb. I'm like, these guys are different. And I said, we started talking about his attributes. I said, my favorite thing about him now is now that we have this trust, he's an extension of my right hand. I can give him minuscule, very minimum feedback. Hey, get to the face of one, get underneath. That's you, close. And he'll say it. So when he's not getting the rep, he can tell the next young guy, hey, face. He'll do face of one, or I'll say hit and sit. Right? Don't be in a hurry to get away from number 2. If 2's not going anywhere, you don't have to either. And he'll say, "Hey, relax. He's not going anywhere." Right? So the more he can do things like that with young guys, it takes a lot of pressure off of what we're doing.
100%.
So, like, that's ultimately the goal. So I think recognizing the teaching is one thing, but the players trusting that it's right is probably the first.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
During one of those turnover circuits, Coach Rule was talking about like squeezing the ball to pick it up. Why you don't scoop score. Why you just don't try to get your hands underneath. Hey, flatten it, pick it up. Flatten it, pick it up. You start seeing clips of guys that could potentially get turnovers and they don't. And then the very next couple of plays,
something bad happens.
Yep. Like they'll do the same thing over and over. And I love it because at some point you'll trust that technique will work.
That's CB. I'm Ravi. Lulla. More Hurrdat Sports coming up next here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Well, first, I want to say thank you to my seniors, those guys who are leaving, who left, and they want to, pursue an NFL career, because really it started with them. When I first got here, they didn't know me, but those guys just bought in right away, and it just set the tone for it. And now Gift's been in the system for 2 years now. He knows what we expect. And it's just uphill. Like we're fine-tuning Gift. Like when we first got here, we had to do some overhaul, but now it's just fine-tuning, just working on his coverage ability and all. That's been the focus for him. And guys like Keese and Tommy and Deshaun, those guys, they know what to expect. And you could just see it. Like I kind of compare it to like when you first move in a house and you wake up in the middle of the night and it's dark and you kind of tiptoe around. But then you stay in the house for a month or two, and then you know exactly where everything is. So, you move at a better pace. That's where those guys are now.
This one feels particularly appropriate. Game preparation and repetition predict success and winning. Drivers and vehicle passengers who always use their seatbelts will increase their survival chances if a crash should happen. Make it click from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well. And we get a little out of pocket on the YouTube comments sometimes.
Who's acting up now?
It's TK always. He still wants us to get to the D line, so let's get to the D line. All right. It was one of my favorite groups last year coming out of spring, and I feel like I was in the minority there. Crazy, I know. But there was a lot of, so we didn't know that Ty and Nash were going to play like that. We didn't know what to expect out of Cam Lenhart and Prince Will. And I think all of those guys at least exceeded the majority of people's expectations. And that gave us a surprisingly good defensive line last year. The question now is, can all of those guys take that to the next level to go from surprisingly good to actually good, right? Because there's a difference from being good compared to expectations and just being good, right? There were times earlier in the year we were talking about Nebraska basketball. They were good compared to what we expected. Then we got to, January, February, like, oh, maybe they're just good, right? Maybe this is just a good group. And maybe that defensive line got to that point last year, but we're adding, Riley Van Poppel played some last year, but he'll be, I think, a big part of what they're doing this year. You've got Maverick Noonan should be a part of the equation this year. And then you've got,
I saw him. I was getting, it doesn't matter what I was doing, but I was going down the ramp and he was going up the ramp, and I just had to give him a love hug. He's got the big smile and the free flowing locks, but he looks spectacular. Not that his frame was not outstanding to be. He left Elk South looking like a dude. But he had to come back from, like, rehab is a lonely place.
Oh, it's the worst.
I'm close to probably thinking that. Like it's
pretty bad.
It's
the worst might be an exaggeration. But it's pretty bad.
It's a lonely place,
especially if you're redshirting because of that, and because you're away from the team so much.
Now and sometimes it's luck of the draw too. Like, who am I rehabbing with?
Yeah,
like
who else got hurt that I'm going through this with every day?
Shoot, man, to see Buford and Singleton together, see, that wouldn't be a bad rehab partner.
Yeah, you got position group,
like-minded. Similar skill set. You guys both know you're going to contribute. It's not easy, but it's easier than kind of being on an island with somebody that's not with you, and you know that you got to go play catch up, right? So that unto itself can thin the herd.
Oh yeah,
right away. So don't ever undersell or assume, because we do it as fans all the time. Oh man, when they get back healthy. Now you gotta get there, man. Like,
Well, and another guy, Brody Tagaloa,
Yeah.
who I
Yeah.
think they were excited about before the car. It was the car accident,
Come
right?
a long way, man.
Like that's a guy that if he's able to return to where he was,
I've watched him pretty close. And so there's there's obviously some work to be done there, but like rehab is, especially now that I think it's back to the rigor.
Mhm.
Like if you're not practicing, it's zero fun.
Yeah.
And you ask some of the old heads, like this ain't big. Like you're not standing around watching. You have like your own station and group. I saw this at Iowa, and I saw it again at Wisconsin.
Mhm.
It looked miserable.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to one of the guys in Iowa City, I'm like, what's that over there? And they have a name for it. And they're like, oh, that's that group. And I started watching them for a little bit because there were two really, really good players that weren't participating in spring.
Mhm.
And so I just was kind of watching their movement because I wanted to just gauge it, right? And I'm like, man, I wouldn't want to be over there,
No.
right? Because I knew, like, if you had to go work with Doak or some of our trainers, like back in the day, it was miserable,
Mhm.
right? You didn't want to be on the Cybex machine. You didn't want to be you didn't want to be in the pool. You didn't want to be in the cold tub. You didn't want to do any of that.
Yeah.
Right? You didn't want to be down in the pit, rehabbing and getting back into conditioning. Like that was miserable, right? So it's like, yeah, I think I'd rather just stay out here and try to practice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For
And
sure.
so now you don't want to do anything to where the point where you're hurting
Yeah, you got to
yourself.
further damage
But
whatever's going on.
it's nice and it's refreshing to understand the difference between injured and hurt.
Mhm.
And also, when you build such a competitive environment, you get guys like Nash
We don't want to miss any reps.
or Gifford.
Yeah.
You like Gifford doesn't have to be out there in the spring, and he's not 100% healthy, but dude's a headbanger.
Yeah.
Right? So watching bugs him. Those are the guys that set the tone.
Wanted to get into excuse me.
Brian Popple, Kai Wallen.
Yeah, I wanted to get into some guys
Judy.
that didn't really play last year,
Mhm.
right? I know one guy, and we brought up Tagaloa. I know a lot of people were high on Vincent Carroll Jackson coming in as well. You mentioned Kai Wallen. Elijah Judy's a super interesting one.
We were ready to give up on him.
Yeah, I mean,
remember the whole narrative about, because we were kind of hitting this string of guys that we'd gotten from the SEC, and it wasn't all it's cracked up to be.
yeah.
He's
a highly touted Texas A&M guy. Was a guy that, and honestly, he was one of the reasons that I was high on the defensive line group. I was like, hey, they're gonna have this transfer coming in. He's gonna be an impact player right away, even more so than probably being high on either Ty Robinson or Nash, right? So I'm like, don't worry, he'll take one of those spots. It'll be fine. And doesn't really play a lot last year. As you said, we kind of give up on him, but then we hear his name pop back up
early
in spring.
Yeah.
As
well, he was playing last year, and it was like, wait, what happened so quick?
Yeah.
Remember Minnesota?
Yeah.
They're like kind of rolling through a lot of the D line early.
But he was
like a new dude.
He wasn't one of those guys I thought last year that would be like an impact guy, right? He was in the rotation.
I'm tracking with you.
But then you hear I think it was Tony White talking early in the spring, who goes, "Oh, he's going to be a really important part of what we're doing. He's going to be a really important part if we want to be the number one defense in the country."
Hey, did you roll your eyes?
No, I didn't.
Because now
because I believe him.
Yeah, now it's like if this dude says something.
Yeah. Like the Tommy Hill thing last year, I rolled my eyes. Right?
Yeah.
I was like, come on.
Shoot, so did everybody.
Come on.
So did every. And I remember distinctly, especially early in spring practice last year, when they kept they're like, this I gotta see.
Yeah.
That's what I said to myself. This I gotta see.
Yeah.
I was so mad at that guy 2 years ago in a particular broadcast. And I mean, I can tell on myself.
Sure.
I mean, I looked at Sharpie and I go, I can't play with him.
I was like, I don't understand what he's doing out there.
I can't.
I don't understand why they keep putting him out there.
And then I was ding-a-ling. And then I just remember watching him at practice because Mickey and these guys, like, I've heard this for a long time.
Mhm.
I heard it from Scott. I heard it from Mickey. I heard it from Chins. And it just was never kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And then late, he kind of showed some flashes on offense.
But it's like at some point, I need you to stop telling me how good a guy is. I need to see how good he is.
And then, he started off last spring in the doghouse.
Mhm.
And then he became, it's weird, right? It's kind of what I gravitate towards because I want a success story.
Mhm.
So I just started watching him at practice. And I'm like, OMG. Like, this is that tough love thing and setting the standard and the expectation. It's working.
Mhm.
Like, he can take a picture of him at practice and say, who's the new guy? And it's like,
But you know why it works? And we've talked about this before. It's because they have invested in him as a person. Right?
the whole list.
That is the only way that works.
You can't see it, so it's not always fun to talk about. But I actually think that's their greatest strength.
I would 100% agree.
Because
you can't get away with some of the stuff
that they say and do
in terms of like the rigor and the competition and the hard coaching and the getting after guys a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
You can't get away with any of that, at least long term, unless there's two things. There's only two ways you can get away with that, and one of them we know is not true. The one way is that you win every game. If you just win at a super high level, nobody says anything till you start losing, right? So you can be Bobby Knight because you're winning national titles at Indiana in the 70s and 80s, right? You can be that guy then because you're winning at such a high level, nobody can argue with you. The other way is if you are so invested in them as people, they know that whatever you say is coming from a good place.
So not to go back to this, but I think what you just talked about was why I wanted you to back off of Dan Hurley. Because the way that his players talk about him and the way that he gets them to practice, it has to be more the latter than the previous. So let me get off that real quick. You don't have to go back and get that.
You're lighting a firework right now,
so,
but that's fine.
Like you got to be able to say to MJ Sherman or Judy or I've watched him check like Kai Wallen, right? And you say some things and it's like, he just talked to that dude like he doesn't even know him, right? Like, but over time, when people trust you, you can say things like, listen, if you ever want to be elite, it has to start with your fitness.
You're not in good enough shape for this right now.
Get in better shape.
Yeah.
Get over the fitness hump. Right now, listen, player X, we're not talking about a talent issue. Get in shape.
Yeah.
And it's like
that's something totally in your control. Take care of it.
But sometimes you feel like people are talking to you like they don't even know you. But they are talking to you like that, just the opposite. It's because they know you. That's how they'll talk to you.
You've built up a trust that whatever you are telling them is A, in their best interest, and B, coming from a good place. Coming from a place where you want them to succeed, maybe even more than they want themselves to succeed in that moment.
And at some point, you hope it manifests itself into wins. But for Nash and Ty to be championing and cheering on younger D linemen, I told this like 4 or 5 years ago, and I'd say, when you can cheer for other people,
even at your own expense,
and it may be at your own expense, that's when the magic happens.
Yep.
You just don't know when it's going to be.
Or if it's going to be. A lot of times it doesn't happen.
When you cheer for your position group, because you know what's slowly starting to happen? It's weird. Like pre-practice is turned into like pre-practice. Pre-practice is turned into like pre-practices. Because at some point, I've seen it. Coach Brown started it, and I didn't even like him then.
Yeah.
I was like, who do these guys think they are coming out? Like, practice isn't even started yet. But I know after about 3 practices my first year, ask any running back. Coach Solich would say, those wide receivers out there, they're not outworking us. So then our practice turned into pre-practice. And instead of standing around, it was like, hey, get the bags. I'm like, we ain't ready for the bags yet. Like, we're not. This ain't practice yet. Like, leave the bags where they're at. But you'd see other groups. See, when you can't beat the offensive lineman out, D-line comes out a little early.
Yeah.
When you see the D-line working, it's like, as a linebacking group, hey man, let's go get down in the corner, man. They're working on their run fits and hand placement. Let's go strike. When you're watching the O-line and you're a running back, it's like, oh man, look, see how they're getting their head around their footwork. Hey, let's go let's go do a crease drill. And then before you know it, guys are like active in all these other little pockets of the practice facility because they don't know any better. You don't want to be the group that's like standing around.
Yeah, that lets everybody else down.
I remember, we were talking. I think it was Micah that asked Caleb at the dinner table the other day. They were talking about something in the huddle or whatever. And Micah's like, "Man, that's a lot of guys. How do you hear everybody?" And Caleb just looking at him like, "Get in a position where you can hear." do you know what I mean? So it was just like,
yeah,
all the things that you think people aren't picking up on that are little things that matter. Like they actually matter. That's how you can bring in competitive people at your position. Yeah. Like you embrace it.
Yeah.
Right. If you can get guys to, I'm telling you, like you watch that D line is big. That ethic, not only it's being birthed, a lot of it. Yeah, Coach Knighton is a true yard dog, right? Like that dude will guard his yard,
even though he sounds like a CPA.
Yep. Hey man, my man was out here the other day. I swear to goodness, it was the funniest thing I've ever seen because I know his personality. He had on a stocking cap that covered the ears and covered his mouth, and a hat that had like a ball on it, like a Nebraska, like a stocking cap.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
thank you.
How is this big, mean-spirited, funny dude out here in that? But you watch him coach.
I bet nobody said nothing to him.
Man, that dude could come out there in pajamas. And people would be like, oh, man, that's just Coach Knighton. Listen, if I'm lying, I'm dying. That's how you know. That's how he can get all those guys to play.
Well, and that's the other thing I like about not just this defensive line, but good defensive lines in general, right, is I feel like they can set the tone of competitiveness for your entire team, and maybe defensive line more than anywhere else, because you can logistically play 8 guys pretty easily, right? So it's really easy for them to be competitive with one another because most of those guys know, like, hey, I can still get my reps. Like, I can still get in the game here. Where it's like, okay, even at offensive line, I know they want to rotate some in there. It's usually not as fluid as the defensive line in terms of rotation. Maybe the only other group that's that fluid.
Yeah, but you'll get to a standard, right? Because you'll know, listen, if I'm only good for 20 snaps, hey, watch these 20.
I'll say watch the 20 snaps.
Watch these 20 snaps I'm about to get.
Also, so you get the taste of what you want, and you're still working for more, right? Because imagine in that group, if you've got a guy that you have to leave on the field for 40 snaps. Imagine how good that guy's going to be coming out of that group. If Coach Knighton's like, I can't take this guy off the field after 20 snaps. I have to leave him in there for 40 snaps because he's that good. The competitiveness just builds and feeds off of itself.
I remember Jamel Williams, and this is kind of a Foreman thing too. Some of these young, really active backers, like they knew like if their spot was special teams, hey, watch this.
Yeah.
Because they were so, I don't know if offended is the word, but bothered by the fact they kind of weren't in the rotation. Now, keep in mind, you could have been a freshman or a redshirt freshman playing behind a third-year junior, right?
Yeah, an All-American,
like
or All-Conference or whatever. Yeah, like
right. It was deep, but it's the whole reps thing. If you're only going to get a certain amount, or this is what you're going to do, you'll get to the point because it's such a competitive arena that it'll be the best you got. And some guys, they know that they're only going to be found maybe on. Did you hear Coach Foley talking about when like D-line or guys come in and say they want to be on special teams? You set the standard. I'm going to give you 4 or 5 things, 4 or 5 minutes. That's it. We're moving on. Like either you want to do this or you don't.
Yeah.
And it's just weird that, not weird, but it's not a coincidence that standard is being set because it's all about competing. The cool thing is it's not just a coach competitive thing. Right, Coach Rule, he always jokes about giving the example. Well, you tell those guys we got 15 third and shorts. It's like, oh man, we got 15 more at the end. It's like, hey, the winner of these 15,
yeah,
such and such, and then all of a sudden it's like they can go all day.
100%.
So he he kept saying this, and I think we kind of low key rolled our eyes.
Mhm.
Like, oh man, competitive. But like the three different teams and coming up with that, like that's creative.
Mhm.
Because you felt like your team had a competitive spirit. So how can we build on that?
Yeah.
That's taking self-inventory real time. Now, how it manifests itself again in wins and losses is
be seen.
the next phase.
Yeah, to be determined.
But doing your homework in the meantime
Mhm.
is progress.
It's
So
trickle down effect.
just a couple of minutes left here. But are there? I know you really like Riley Van Poppel. You brought him up with Shafe on Tuesday. Is there any other guys in that defensive line room that you're looking at and you go, hey, I think that guy might have a big year?
I mean, obviously Nash. I like Van Poppel. I like a lot of those guys.
You like Nash at the lighter weight.
I do.
Yeah.
I like Nash anyway.
Sure.
Because
I think he's going to finish more plays at 310 than he did at 335.
I just like he loves it.
Mhm.
If you love something, it's like
that matters.
Oh, it's like anything else.
Mhm.
If you truly love something and it's like the agape, like unconditional,
Mhm.
you'll do anything.
Yeah.
He'll do anything.
Yeah.
And I think when that's the standard, when he could chill and he's not,
Mhm.
You see a guy like Ty Robinson come back and he didn't have to.
What's the next step for like a Cam Lenhart, Prince Will?
So
What's that look like?
So it's kind of the same, I think, or different for the same reasons. I think for Cam,
Mhm.
it's maybe you play inside a little bit more.
Okay.
Maybe you develop a capacity to play against the run, so
More
you
of
can
a 3-down type.
in a 3 technique ish kind of spot,
Mhm.
right? It's dark in there. It's a little loud. It's noisy. Learn to function in there. With Princewell, Umame Wellen, it's just the opposite,
Mhm.
right? We know the length, gifted physically. We'll keep saying. I feel like it's the Stephen Bardo. Who was the guy that he would always talk about? He'd say, "I wonder if he knows how good he could be." Was it Siobhan Shields? It was somebody. No, it was Blanton.
Oh,
Delano
yeah,
Banton.
Yeah,
It was Banton.
Banton, yeah.
I wonder if he knows how good he could be. And I'm like, he'd say it every broadcast.
Mhm.
With Princewell, you hope that he understands
How good he can be.
how good he can be because
Physically, he's
got long arms. He's relatively lean for that
we
weight.
saw him make some freaky plays last year.
Yeah, be good against the run.
Yeah.
If I'm those are the steps for those guys. Kai Wallen, it's hey, hang in there against the intensity, multiple plays in a row.
Mhm.
Go from flashy to consistent.
Yeah.
So I think they'll have some Isaiah Roby, thank you, the mayor.
Oh, Roby.
It was
yeah,
Roby.
Yep.
That's right, it was.
Yeah.
I knew it was one of those light skinned guys. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. That's kind of how I feel about Princewell because he says about I don't know, probably 12 words a day, maybe.
Yeah.
But there's a lot in there.
There is a lot in there. Good discussion there on the defensive line. There you go, TK. We got to it. We will have more.
Dang, TK, I got to get on the comments.
He was,
Where we
he was getting after us yesterday about the D line. We got to the D line, TK. We'll keep doing these positional group breakdowns throughout the spring. I'm gonna try and do them every day, but like I said, this show's a wild card. I really don't know. I mean, I put together a lineup, but that really means nothing. We will be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
How's that picture look? I mean, you guys have not had any trouble in that area at all, right?
Why? Why you got to say that? You're like my son. He's like, it's like a jinx. Yeah. Well, that's, there's been Marco set the trend last year, and Marco was a consummate pro. We were really fortunate to get him, and he's done really well out in the circuit and got himself invited to different combines, and a lot of NFL teams are looking at him right now. So for Camden to be able to work with him last year was really critical, and got a really not just a sense of like how to snap the football, but also how to perfect your craft. I mean, Marco was working all the time You guys understand, like they're trying not just to get the ball to the holder, they're trying to get the ball to the holder so the holder can just take it and put it down and doesn't have to move the laces at all. So, I mean, I think Marco is as good a short snapper as I've worked with, and he was great with that. And he was meticulous about the details. And for Camden to see that was really cool. So, he had a good year experience behind Marco, and now he's got to step up and do it.
We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on the Pillar Exterior stage. And
Camden, Watucky.
Camden?
Watucky. From Michigan.
Ooh, Michigan.
I think Grand Blanc.
Grand Blanc? Not Grand Rapids?
I think it's Grand Blanc. Because I know he went to GBC. I think he went to the community college, but yeah, he's up as a snapper. Pretty integral part.
Oh yeah. Well, and Sip's just out here trying to ruin everything by jinxing people. So
what do you do?
Sip, we need to do a little better than that.
Hey, so Sip is Monday, Shane?
He will be on Monday with us.
Slow down. Sorry.
Why you gotta say that?
And that's gonna be a thing, isn't it?
Probably. But no, it's we'll talk to Sip on Monday, see why he's trying to jinx everything. See he was trying to ruin everything,
Yeah. That if they can elevate just the consistency. I don't even know what the numeric benchmark is, but just the consistency of special teams, that's got to be worth plus 1.5 wins.
Well, and you
got to get better from field goal place kicking outside of 40.
Mm-hmm.
You got to return the ball better.
That's been a problem for a while.
And like that's the thing right there.
Well, because and you're not even asking necessarily for, splash plays or touchdowns or whatever out of the return game, but you're asking not to give up these huge chunks of hidden yardage, right?
Yeah, you can't go minus 60 yards every game.
Yeah, you can't be, starting at the 15 when you could be starting at the 30. Like that. That's a thing that has happened consistently over the last handful of years that probably does cost them games. And obviously the field goal kicking is easy to see, right? Because it's the most tangible in terms of points on the board. But the hidden yardage on kick and punt returns is maybe more concerning just because it's been such a consistent problem over the last few years. But I don't know. We'll see. I think they've got the right mindset for special teams now, and I think that's half the battle.
You're starting to get better depth too, so that's always
putting better players out there certainly always helps.
I'm telling you.
What's wrong with them schematically?
I know they just don't have very good players out there.
I don't know if it's technical or tactical, but let's start with
let's
some
start
depth.
with let's start with good players.
Yeah,
let's start with good players and go from there. Speaking of good players, there's been a Major League Baseball story I kind of wanted to get to over the last few days because the Major League Baseball Players Association a couple days ago came out with an accusation or a statement to the league, basically accusing the pitch clock of being the cause of all of these rash of arm injuries that we've seen from pitchers. And there has been a ton of discussion on both sides of the issue since then. And I know you're a big baseball guy, obviously. I grew up, not very well, but pitching and doing, playing baseball and whatever. And when I hear that, it sounds like them just making excuses because they don't like the pitch clock. Like it's not like injuries with pitchers are new. It's been getting progressively worse for probably 2 or 3 decades at this point, where it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. The pitch clock has been around for 1 year at the major league level. It's been around for several years at the minor league level, but the trend hasn't, as far as I can tell in the data I've looked at, the trend hasn't changed with the pitch clock. It's changed with, and this is probably the biggest argument against it, it's changed with the analytics on spin rate. That's the thing that is
that and the balls. I'm in agreement there. Because I think there's multiple factors.
Yeah,
because the spin is just my opinion.
Yeah.
I think the spin rate thing was birthed from obviously I think the Astros staff were kind of the kingpins of it, or at least
I think
the
Tampa
catalyst.
was early too.
Yeah.
Tampa was early on that.
And because you have to miss bats now. So and Verlander had a really, really good.
Yeah, nobody pitches to contact anymore.
Well, yeah, because you can't.
Yeah.
Now, maybe it'll be different without as much shifts where a guy can push a ball weekly the other way and it'll work. But no, it's like Verlander said, he's like, you try to pitch guys low and away now or stay away. And he said they just leave the yard opposite
Oppo
field.
taco on you, yeah.
So he said the real pressure now is swing and miss. You got to be a swing and miss guy. He said he's had to change dramatically in terms of how he attacks hitters, and he's so late in his career.
And he had a late career bump when he got to the Astros,
which really helped him with swinging and missing. He said, but the other thing is he said, sure, a little bit of the pitch clock, sure, a little bit of the analytics. He said, but guys now they throw as hard as they can.
It's the max effort thing,
right? It's like
the max effort every single pitch.
I'll take it.
And
part of that's the depth of lineup. You can't take any breaks in a lineup anymore.
Yeah, he said so. It's kind of like, in his opinion, a culmination of things. But when guys put the ball in play,
they do damage.
They do, yeah. And he's been on record for years about the noticeable change in the baseball.
Yeah,
and how guys train too.
Yeah.
No, he didn't make any accusations. But
Sure.
he's like, guys can now leave the ballpark at any time, regardless of pitching placement.
Yeah. So if you're not missing, if you're not putting,
if guys aren't swinging and missing, you pay the price.
If you're not putting, because we've seen, it used to be when I was, back in my day, I've got to go old guy here. But you go, if a guy threw 95, like that was heat, right? Now guys are throwing off-speed stuff at 94, 95. Like that.
Yeah, you could easily see a 91, 92 mile an hour slider.
Yeah, and I've seen a ton of 94 mile an hour.
Randy Johnson used to be unique.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Now you see a 94, 95 mile an hour two-seamer that has almost as much run as a slider. And, I was just watching a Jordan Hicks video on Pitching Ninja on Twitter, and that thing
bless Rob Friedman's heart.
I love that account. It's incredible.
He's fantastic.
But I'm watching that thing come in the mid 90s.
Was that what yesterday when you asked me how you're supposed to hit that?
Oh, that was a different guy. That was some, I don't know who it was.
He ran it up under his hands.
Yeah, he was going righty into a lefty at 101 on the inside corner, and it's like even if you make contact with that, your bat saws in half and you probably break your wrists, right? Because it's coming in at 101 on the black. You know how many guys used to be able to throw 100 miles an hour? Like maybe one or two at a time.
Pretty rare.
Now there's just dozens of them, right? Like there is.
Like, you have
not a pitch clock.
You have
issue.
stables of bullpens
that nobody throws lower than like 98.
Right. And
now
they can't really get into the rotations because they don't have good command.
Or they've only got two pitches instead of three or four.
And conversely, like you used to be able to get away with command. And I think good pitchers will still tell you location matters. But you can't, it's not as much about high, low, and in and out as much as it is now. As much as it is now about you got to be able to make guys miss.
Yeah. Like it would be really hard to operate. And
you wouldn't think you could hit Hader, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Hader would run one up around your numbers, and you shouldn't be able to catch up with that.
Nope.
But people are hitting that.
Yeah. If it's straight, it doesn't matter how fast it is now.
So I mean, it's like location still matters. I would just love to see, guys that could paint black. And I mean, will you ever see Glavins again?
Yeah. Glavin. I mean, I was Glavin, Maddox. I mean, guys like that where I'd like to think Maddox because
I say Glavin because it's more ascertainable.
Yeah. Maddox was
Glavin is he's kind of the standard.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really disingenuous to be like, oh, it's the pitch clocks.
No, I'm with you. It's kind of a lazy take.
It's like, no, this trend has been happening for a while.
Yeah.
And all the players have participated. Coming up next, we will get to Brian Edwards, our Vegas insider here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio. Now, Vegas insider, senior handicapper, and fan of the cold Budweiser bottles, Brian Edwards.
It's got to be touchdown, touchdown, touchdown.
Brian Edwards.
I don't really love it.
Brian Edwards.
The way they're using the cream cheese to butter the bagel.
Brian Edwards.
I'm going with the cowgirl.
Here is Brian Edwards.
We're wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube here on the Pillar Exterior stage. And joining us now is our guy, Brian Edwards. See if we can make a little money this weekend. B, what's going on, man?
What's up, fellas? How we doing? Did you guys cash in on UConn Monday night?
No, but didn't everybody?
I feel like they did. I don't think I know anybody who had Purdue.
I don't understand. Like, is it just me or did Vegas have to take a bath?
They had to. I mean, well, no, they could have changed the numbers. I can't even believe they threw out 6 there Saturday night.
I mean, I think the highest I saw was a 7. I just don't know, like in good faith.
I think I saw 7.5 at one point.
You couldn't even convince yourself that 7 was good value. And some people are value guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lot of futures tied up, so all I needed was the outright win. But and obviously I could have gotten, if UConn would have won by less than 6, I'd have kicked myself. But I mean, I could not press. And after the game, I'm like, man, that should have been the biggest bet of my life.
I know. That's everybody's. I'm serious. Like, I don't know. What was it, like 80% of the public money on UConn? And that might be low.
Yeah. It had to be at least that.
I mean, who do y'all think? Like, I just go back to 90, 91 UNLV and the Gators 06, 07. In terms, I mean, obviously UCLA in the 70s. Well, that was way before me, but like
it had that dominant a run.
Right. No, well, this one was more dominant. They won more than 13 or more in 12 games. 13 or more.
Yeah, in terms of margin of victory, nobody's like ever.
Right. Ever.
Right. And so I don't know. I'm just watching that. And the crazy thing to me, and I don't like Dan Hurley just in general, but the coaching job he did, because I know you're a Gator guy, right? But they brought everybody back. From 06 to 07, they brought everybody back. Everybody that mattered, right? You're talking Horford, Brewer, Noah. I'm missing one.
Humphrey and Torian
Green. That's the other one I was thinking of, right? So they brought everybody back.
Two different teams.
Yeah, UConn lost their best 3 players, and Hurley's like, "Nah, we're cool. Don't worry about it." And they were better. Like that's the thing that is unbelievable to me. And I do just have to remind everybody that Creighton beat that team by almost 20. Kind of waxed them a little bit in Omaha here, but last team. I mean, they were last team to beat the 2018 Villanova team.
He can't help himself.
I'm just saying, so
Brian,
like
it's okay.
2 of the most dominant teams that we've seen in the last 10 years, 18 Villanova and 2024 UConn, both lost their last game to Creighton. So I just, whatever that's worth, just something to think about, something to take home.
B, you got any futures on the Masters?
Guys, y'all know I don't know anything about golf. Y'all give me something. I mean,
I just was sometimes, and I kind of know your personality a little bit. When you see all that plus money, like you'll ask a friend, right? Like, right. Hey man, 40 to 1.
Well,
right.
So no, B. So we were talking earlier because Scotty Scheffler's wife is pregnant. He's the favorite at like plus 300, plus 325, whatever. The next closest guy is about plus 1,000. And I'm sitting here. First thing I think of isn't like, oh, what a good guy saying he's going to go be there for his wife. I was like, okay, if he bails in the middle of the tournament, like, what does that do to the betting odds?
Yeah, you think Vegas would go back and get a withdrawal?
Or do you think they bake it into the odds up front?
They're clearly not doing that.
No, I didn't think so. Unless he'd be like plus 100 otherwise.
You say he's a plus 300 favorite? I mean, that's like
that's Tiger. That's prime Tiger Woods.
Like plus 325, I think. Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, I don't feel like I've seen that short of a number since Tiger in his prime.
Yeah, it's not even. So it goes 3 to 1, and the next closest is 10 to 1.
Yeah.
Is that Rory? I'm sorry, guys.
It is Rory.
Yeah, there's a jump.
There's probably
a bunch of guys between like
Koepka, Rory. Those guys are like 10,
Wyndham
11,
Clark's like
and 12,
14 somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of guys between like 10 to 1 and 15 to 1. But there's a huge gap between them and Scheffler. And I'm just. He said yesterday he would leave if his wife went into labor. And I'm just thinking like, okay, is that a hey, Vegas calls no bet? Because they have I really don't think they baked it into the odds. Otherwise, he'd have to be closer to the pack. I think
this guy's up 4 strokes on Sunday, and he gets the call, and he's like, "Yep, I'm out."
I'll be like, "No, I'm gonna go ahead and finish my round, honey."
Well, I'm pretty sure the golf rules are if he starts the tournament, it's the bet is action.
Right.
That's what I.
Oof.
That's what I've always.
And maybe
heard.
That's how they hedge those short odds too. Right? Like, okay, yeah, that's fine. You can take the prohibitive favorite,
but he might bail
but
on you.
It could cost you.
B, let's get into your wheelhouse here with UFC. Got UFC.
How about this card? Though?
300.
Can we just say that? Like, this card is unbelievable.
It is so good.
B, you gave us some ones that you like right off the bat. Obviously, the headliner, Oliveira and Hill. What do you like that one right off the top there?
So, just really
Oh, it's
small.
Pereira and Hill. Sorry, that's my bad.
That's all right. That's all right. I'm going to go with Hill. Now, this is a tough handicap. So he tore his Achilles at International Fight Week, which I didn't go back and look. It's usually either the weekend before 4th of July or the weekend after. So early mid-July, he tore his Achilles. So it feels like he's coming back a little bit early. Now, if I thought he was really healthy, I would absolutely love Jamal Hill, and I think Jamal Hill would be favored. That's just my opinion. Pereira is great, and he can win, obviously. But I like Sweet Dreams Hill at the small underdog price, like plus 115 at BetMGM. But I have him in a 3-leg parlay, which he would close. So if the parlay gets killed, I'll bet more on him. But just pre-show, just a little bit on Hill, and I'll tell you about the parlay in a minute.
All right, so the names are star-studded now, but where we're getting them in their career is interesting, and perhaps none more important than Oliveira, who at one time was like this feared monster, but he's been through so many wars. But can you turn down plus 180?
Heck no, and it reminds me so much of Dustin Poirier and Benoit Saint Denis. Just at UFC 299, you got the veteran going against the young up and comer, but how is the veteran this big of an underdog? Okay, so Oliveira is 12-1 in his last 13. He'd won 11 in a row. He lost to Makhachev to lose the belt, but then he fights Dariush, who's on an 8-fight winning streak, and he finishes him in the first round. So he has a great bounce back performance. And Sarukian is a huge step up in competition. Now, he faced Islam too in his UFC debut, and he lost. Then he ripped off a bunch of wins in a row. He lost one fight, and now he's won 3 in a row. But his best wins are Matt Frivola, and another guy who's not even ranked yet, who I'm spacing on right now. So huge step up in competition. I think Oliveira still got it. Is 34, but I got to take him plus 190, 180, 190.
I think the largest underdog play plus money play you have here is on Garbrandt, about 2 plus 250.
I just watched him be on my TikTok get smoked by Kai after they had this heated, prelim, and Garbrandt went to sleep. I was like, why is he on my FYP page? And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I've been checking out UFC because it's just funny that he's getting ready to roll now with his big mouth.
So why do you like Garbrandt at plus money?
So since he got starched by Kai France, he's won 2 in a row. It's been 2.5 years since he got knocked out. It's now been more than 5 years since he had that 3-loss streak where he got knocked out 3 times, twice by Garbrandt. So he's in a much better place. He's matured. And I think his head's right. He seems a lot happier. He had gone through a divorce. He had bad things going on in his life 4 or 5 years ago. He's in a much better place, and he's always got a puncher's chance. So small play, but he's plus 250. And this 2 former champions is the first fight of the entire card. That shows you how deep and awesome this card is.
You want to talk Gaethje independently or as part of the 3-leg?
Either or. So I've got him in the 3-leg. Gaethje against Holloway, and
two formerly bad men. Which version are we getting of both these old veterans?
Yeah, I think we're going to get a great version, and this has fight of the night, if not fight of the year, written all over it. And the price is going down on Gaethje. If it goes less than minus 150, I might bet a little bit straight, not too much. But so I've got him in the parlay with Weili Zhang in the co-main. She's the only heavy favorite, and then Hill to close it out. So if Zhang and Gaethje both win, and I've already got a little bit of a bet on Hill, and it's a 3-1, pays 3-1, I will definitely hedge a little with Pereira if my parlay is still alive. But Gaethje Holloway, it's going to be awesome. we saw Holloway go up to 155 and fight Poirier once, and you could tell the weight was a factor. And I think it's the factor here. I think it'll be a great fight, but I give the edge to Gaethje.
Hey, can you believe, and maybe this is more out of respect to Namajunas, but that Zhang is like bounced back? Because 2021 seems like forever ago when people look at the dominance of her career, but she lost to Rose back to back, and since then, like, she got Joanna, she got the decision over Amanda, but she's like a monster. And just 3 years ago, she couldn't beat Rose. It's kind of weird.
Right. Yeah. I was there when Rose knocked her out, and that was shocking. I mean, yeah, it wasn't shocking that Rose won, but it was shocking the way it happened.
Now she's 5-1 to Saturday.
Yeah, and I just think that Wei Li is wow, she is kind of getting up there at age 34, but I think she's got this one. I lost on her inside the distance her last fight when she did win by decision. So I'm hesitant to go that route again, which is the only way I could bet her straight because she's too heavily favored. But I got her in the parlay.
That's Brian Edwards, BrianEdwardsSports.com, Vegas Insider. B, we appreciate it as always.
Thanks, B.
Thanks, guys. Y'all have a great weekend.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla, and we're brought to you by the Omaha Supernovas. Go to supernovas.com to check out schedule, where you can watch the away games, what you can find for a little bit of merchandise in their shop as well, or you can get tickets for their next home match coming up on April 20th right here at the CHI Health Center. That's April 20th here in Omaha. Go to supernovas.com for tickets, any information you need, and like I said, get a little bit of merch as well to wear to those games. That's supernovas.com. Joining us now is our guy, Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7. Bruntz, what's going on, buddy?
Not much. How you guys doing?
What's up, Mr. Mensa? How are things? How's it been?
Not bad. Not bad. How you been, DB? It's been a while.
I know I'm hanging in there. I'm curious because I feel like 3 out of the last 6 times I've talked to you, I said, "Hey, what do you think Nebraska should do about Caleb Clark?" But I'm going to ask you a different one. And this isn't just recency bias. It's just because it hasn't been as smooth a sailing, and where his importance is in this staff, whether it's midday or a spot start on the weekend. I'm curious. What do you think the direction is for Drew Christo, if you're Will Bolt?
That's a good question.
He's tricky.
The answer to that, I think, is also influenced quite a bit by what's around him.
Okay.
Right? Because I think, Nebraska has the Saturday stuff figured out, I think, with McConnell. He can at least get you 5 or 6, and that's more than enough on Saturday for this team at the bullpen, the high leverage guys at least.
Yep.
With Christo, it's a matter, I think, of whether you feel like on Sundays he can get you enough depth in the start to, on Sundays, sometimes you're bringing a guy back for the second time on the weekend, and you can't be, running your bullpen guys in there in like the 4th inning. And, I think for him, the problem is that there's such a high ceiling, and sometimes it's just tough to get to that ceiling. I mean, his last couple starts, he's, fallen behind a little bit, or the fastball's been a little bit too over the plate. And, he's got a good fastball, but everybody can hit velocity now. And you got to be able to
We just talked about that.
Like, you got to be able to locate it better. I was watching your Dodgers yesterday, Damon.
Yeah.
And
Miller?
the 98 looks great, but it can go back the other way really fast.
You found that out in the first inning, huh? You didn't have to wait too long.
I'll say 98 and straight comes back at you at about 110.
Yeah, and blame BC too, because yesterday morning he goes, and good luck on the sweep. My Twins are having a hard time scoring. And I was like, yeah, well, if the Dodgers aren't going to score more than 2, you're okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of the question, I guess, is whether or not you feel better with Christo on Sundays or Walsh is your guy on Sundays. And, I think you basically know who your 4 starters are now, more than likely. It's just a matter of kind of how you want to line up the back 2, which is Christo and Walsh.
So, Bruntz, if you're kind of evaluating Nebraska here, and, they still have a pretty strong RPI, they'll have a couple opportunities in conference, whether it's Maryland or Ohio State or even Rutgers, that are not, they're pretty solid in terms of opponents.
Folks in Columbus are saying, it's not where we want to be, but it's about time we at least have a pulse.
Yeah.
They showed up on Sunday.
It's amazing. How are they not better? Like how have they not been better since Nebraska's been in the Big Ten?
They've always had just kind of okay guys. I mean, they're always that team that they always underperformed a little bit. They had guys that would that would kind of pop up in the majors here and there that you're kind of like, oh, I remember him. He was, we saw him for 4 years.
He was fine.
Yeah, he was okay. But I don't know. It's a good question. I think the hire they made was kind of intriguing because they brought guys from power baseball conferences and they recruit well. Well, they're still pretty young, so we'll see if they can do anything there. But that has always seemed like a school that should probably be a little bit better than what they are, or a little bit more consistent at least. It felt like they were a little volatile with where they would finish in the Big Ten standings.
So Bruntz, let me ask you this. You got a few opponents in the top 50. You've got over half the league in the top 100 currently. So you've got some opportunities for quality wins, or at least not disastrous losses, right? Which I think in the Big Ten is just as important. Is Nebraska's margin of error a little bit bigger this year than maybe we anticipated, or it has been in years past, in terms of you don't have to really wring your hands quite as much about every game you lose within Big Ten play?
Yes, there's still an element though of like, there's certain games that you just can't, like they needed to, even Northwestern when they played them, that was they were 72 in the RPI, which,
and they're like 105 now, I think.
Yeah, I mean they're kind of trending the way that you kind of thought they would, but I mean the tough part for Nebraska is just by virtue of playing baseball, the RPI and the strength of schedule is going to struggle from what it was.
Sure.
And I think people just need to kind of be okay with that. That said, I mean, the next, 10 to 12 games, you've got, let's see, you're going to Rutgers, which I think is better than what they've shown.
That's a top 50.
You've got K-State in a midweek. You've got Kansas in a midweek. You've got Creighton in a midweek. And you've got Maryland and Iowa. So I mean, this is kind of, you don't want to say, oh, this is the season right here, but I mean, this is a really key stretch of games for this team in terms of where they're going to head and what the postseason looks like for them. So they've got to get things kind of dialed in here to finish up April, because a lot of the, not marquee, but the games that you would hope that you would win as a potential NCAA tournament team they're right here. So you got to get it in order.
Maybe it's as easy as saying play them both. I don't, after having watched this team so much and knowing both guys, but Nebraska offensively has shown a lot of versatility. What do you think they ultimately land on in terms of how to play Sanderson and Brumbaugh and play to both their strengths at the same time?
Yeah, well, yeah. I asked Will this specifically yesterday if he's been kind of frustrated by the fact that they haven't gotten Sanderson in the lineup more. But I mean, he had an at bat against Kansas the other night that it was like a 7 or 8 pitch at bat.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yep.
And it was just like, that's like a 22-year-old, 23-year-old type at bat, not like an 18-year-old kid. And that's how he's been since he showed up on campus. And, I think one thing that's going to help them, Will didn't commit to this yesterday, but I think it's trending that way, is that there's potential that they could get Brumbaugh back in the field in some form or fashion, whether that's in the outfield or at second base. And if you do that, then you all of a sudden free up the designated hitter spot, and you have some place that you can put Sanderson. I mean, they've been willing to put him in the outfield the last few games. He played some first base against Kansas when Stone left the game. So there's options there. But I mean, the easiest way is just for Brumbaugh to get healthy enough to play in the field, and then you put both of them in there, which, I mean, Brumbaugh's been a really nice spark when he's been in there at the top of the lineup. And I mean, they've hit Sanderson leadoff. They've hit him, I think, 3rd and 4th in the lineup. He can kind of do everything. So getting him in the lineup every day would be huge, especially as they've kind of, had some consistency issues with Anglem and Swanson and some of those guys that are, kind of in a platoon right now in the outfield.
We're talking with Michael Bruntz, Husker 24/7. Bruntsy, let's change gears here, go to football now. Obviously, media got a little bit of an extended time viewing practice, and maybe not extended time so much as a different look rather than a lot of stretching. You actually got to see a little bit of, football, which is nice. Did you walk away from it with any dramatic declarations you'd like to declare on incredibly small sample sizes?
Not the one that you're talking about. I don't think I want to declare anything there.
Who says I'm trying to lead you anywhere, Bruntz? I'm just asking a question.
You were leading me there. You pulled the chair out for me.
He did. That's what he does. Careful.
I mean, the throws were nice. I mean, that was my takeaway. I don't know that was, out of the ordinary for anything that, anybody that's seen Danny Kaelin play has seen him do. You win, you don't win the Elite 11 accuracy competition by accident. So that didn't really shock me all that much. Having seen this team, I guess, in various forms, for very small windows in the last 2 weeks, the thing that I'm struck by, and I don't know if you'd agree with this, but I mean, just when you compare where the offensive line is right now from where they were this time last year, maybe not in the way that they perform, but just the number of guys that they have that you can kind of talk yourself into getting on the field.
Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable, isn't it? I mean,
I completely agree. Ravi dribbled this a couple weeks ago. He goes, how weird is it that we haven't even talked about Mike Mazuka? And a year ago, that would have been a guy that you felt like had to play if he transferred in.
Yeah, and the thing that was interesting to me about the actual 11-on-11 football that we got to see was how different the combinations were that I probably would have expected to be in there. Like the first team that they were using, I mean, you had a redshirt freshman at left tackle, you had Jacob Hood at right tackle, and the interior guys, it was Micah Mazuka and Henry Lutovsky with Justin Evans at center. And it looked okay. Like the picture looked okay there. And then you roll in and you've got Teddy at left tackle. I'm trying to remember who the guards were with that group, but Ben Scott's playing center. You've got Bryce Benhart, who's played, I think, about 75 games as a Nebraska football player at right tackle. I mean, the conversation this time last year was, do we have enough offensive linemen to complete the spring game? Mm-hmm. And now you're rolling in, a pretty good two deep of offensive linemen. And by the way, you've got Grant Bricks over there. You've got Gibson Pyle, two freshmen that are on campus that look the part right now, too, to my eye. Sam Sludge is in there, too.
I was saying all the guys that redshirted last year,
Yeah. So that was kind of what stood out to me the most, was just like, man, they've really overhauled what they've got going on there. And you're right about Mazuka. I mean, he looks like a guy that started at multiple Power 5 places. Like there wasn't much fanfare to that addition, but if that can hit, I mean, that's huge for that offensive line.
How about them getting Jacob Hood back where he's functional and able to move around well? Like,
yeah,
and I get it. Coach Rules talks about it, but we don't really know because we can't see the practical application of it. But the rest, recovery, rehab portion of his philosophy and getting guys ready to play is so refreshing, because he can buoy that Bruntz against, and we don't think, oh, they're just being lazy, or if a guy loafs or slacks in practice, they're forced to play him anyway because they don't have anybody else, right? There's no, I shouldn't even use his name, but it's not like, they got these guys in the wide receiver room that have been at odds with coaches that they have to play because they're the best players, right? It's like, right. He can say they need rest and recovery and rehab is important, but they're going to get their work in too.
Right. No, and I mean, Hood's an interesting case because from talking to people that covered Georgia, I don't know that there was a lot of expectation that he would, be where he is right now at Nebraska. That's probably the gentle way of putting it.
Yeah.
And he looks a lot different. He'd obviously had a lot of, injury issues at Georgia and early on at Nebraska. And I mean, just him being out there the other day with the group he was out there with, I was kind of like, oh, that was a surprise to me.
We're talking with Michael Bruntz, Husker 24/7. Bruntz, earlier we were talking on the other side of the line, the defensive line, and kind of going through some breakdown on that as well. kind of a similar vibe from last year to this year on that one as well. I think maybe we had a little more confidence in the defensive line, but I think we looked at it and be like, oh man, we're going to need X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, that was
player.
everybody's concern except for yours.
Yeah, I liked him coming out of the spring, and I don't know why. I probably just kind of a blind squirrel in a nut situation there. But, this is a defensive line that maybe second to the offensive line has had the biggest perception change year over year because of what we saw last year, right?
Oh yeah, I mean,
and for different reasons, right? I'm still not sure we love Donnie, but boy, do we love Knighton, and they're both come heck or high water. They've both been pretty good.
Yeah, they have been, and it's the defensive line conversation. I mean, people have to remember this time last year. I mean, Nash Hutmaker was not Nash Hutmaker. You know what I mean? Like, there was a lot of the conversation was, is he ready to take that step? Like, can he have that?
Can we get 30 plays?
Remember that?
Yeah, I probably said something stupid.
Me
like
too.
That.
Hey, I did. Welcome to the Air
everybody,
Dap Club.
Everybody was hoping that he could just be like senior year Damian Daniels. Probably was what everybody was hoping for, and his emergence has completely changed that room.
And then guys that we thought had to be good, like Elijah Judy, were kind of afterthoughts.
How about Shafe looking like a genius? Remember how much, and because you talked to him more, but how he was banging the drum over Riley Van Poppel in that recruitment, and how he felt like for so long, like Nebraska fans didn't recognize what they potentially could be getting.
Well, and it was I'm trying to remember the timeline of everything, but he was one of those guys that committed early and kind of got lost in the wash.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
100%.
And I remember Schaefer and I did we did like a 20-minute interview podcast video thing with Van Poppel, and you're kind of like, okay, this guy gets it. Like, and that I feel like is always such an indicator of how much early success a guy has, is like whether or not just like he's like framing things right in his mind about going to college and like what the challenge is. And he just had that. And I mean, he got valuable snaps last year. I think he's going to get a ton out of that year. And, the conversation now with that defensive line in my mind is, you've got a lot of guys that are kind of, not a lot, but a few guys that are more like situational pieces. And if you can get like James Williams, Elijah Judy, and Van Poppel to a degree, I mean, if you can get them to be 3-down players, I mean, that's a really scary group that they've got, that they can kind of use to attack you in different ways. And I'm intrigued by what Ty Robinson can be after. I don't know about you guys. It felt like at the end of the year with him, he was so close to making so many really big plays, and you just wonder if with another year and of experience and whatever he's going to do in the off season, if those kind of almost become plays that he makes.
Bruntz, I asked somebody about this. It was probably one of your Husker 24/7 colleagues, either BC or Shafe. I don't remember. We talked to so many of you guys. But
the big three, man.
But I'm watching those Chasing Three little documentary videos and stuff, and I'm looking at Nash and Ty, and I agree with you. I think Ty was really close to finishing a bunch more big plays last year. I think Nash was the same way. We know the weight loss story with Nash and the wrestling and everything, and he's going to play lighter this year. But I also saw in that episode Ty Robinson, who looked like maybe one of the leanest 300-pounders I've ever seen in my life, walking around in street clothes. I don't know if that's going to translate, but it does have me a little excited.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's, you saw a lot of guys kind of transform themselves last off season, but this is year 2 with the strength staff and the way that they approach things. And there's a few of those guys that are walking around that look completely different. I mean, Teddy looks like he was kind of on the Bryce Benhart trend.
Oh gosh,
last year.
I was messing with him the other day, and he kind of only barely chuckled, so I didn't know if I was funny or not. But man,
gave it a courtesy laugh.
Yeah, it's kind of how it felt. but then he like picks me up off the ground for a hug. I had to get on my tiptoes again, but he is smiling and moving and jogging and running like it's like, oh my gosh, I think I have a warm spot. Right? It's like just to see him. Because it's hard, man. You look at him and you're like, that's a lot of humanity.
Yeah, he's enormous.
For guys to be moving around and we just take
and
for
to
granted.
be athletic at that size. Yeah.
But his frame of mind, he seemed to be in a good spot.
Yeah. No. Well, do you think it's just him being on the field? Like
maybe.
Yeah, just not being injured.
Like, I mean, it's been a long road for him, and the spring is kind of, historically for him been a time where it's like he's dealing with something. But yeah, no, we talked to him, I think one of the first times out in spring, and you could tell there was a lightness about him. And he's always a guy too that, when he talks, like he takes this very seriously, like the football thing. And, I think he thinks pretty seriously about confidence and stuff like that. And he doesn't really hide it. So, I mean, the fact that he's, manhandling you and smiling and stuff like that, I guess that's a good sign for where his head's at, maybe.
I got to go back to baseball before I get you out of here, Bruntz, just because I get varying opinions and we've watched this thing up close. Number one, do you even have a comp for the turnaround? And number two, what in the world do you think has happened with Sears year over year?
We were talking about this in the press box on Friday of whether or not there's somebody that's had that kind of a turnaround. And I couldn't think of anybody right offhand. But you look at the numbers that he had in the summer, he's just always been a guy that if he's starting, it just clicks with him more. And I mean, Will and the staff, I think, has kind of had to wear it a little bit to their credit they have that, they kind of missed the mark with trying to bring him out of the bullpen as a high leverage guy last year. I mean, that's just the truth of it. And I don't know. I mean, he's got great control. The fastball, he can, really locate it well. Against Ohio State, I mean, I want to say he threw in the last 3 or 4 innings. I was sitting next to the Ohio State guys that were tracking it up in the press box, and he threw something like 30 or 40% of his pitches were changeups. And to the point where it was like they were wondering if he had developed a new pitch based on what he was showing. So, I mean, he legitimately has 4 pitches that he can throw for strikes. I think he has a really good understanding of how to pitch, not just how to throw. And, yeah, I mean, the other thing that he does that I know just annoys the heck out of hitters, he works really fast.
It's unbelievable. Like, it's almost like are you at wake or like he works quick.
Yeah, like the umpires have had to tell him a few times to calm it down and slow down. So he's on a really kind of putting together a special year. So he'll be fun to watch over the second half of the year here.
It's Michael Bruntz, Husker 24/7. Bruntsy, we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, you guys. Take care.
Thanks, Bruntsy.
That's Michael Bruntz, Husker 24/7. We will have more of Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln coming up next.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on KFOR in Lincoln as well as Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And we're brought to you by our friends at Warhorse Casino, Warhorse Sportsbook. That is the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. You've got the casino in Lincoln. You've got Horseman's Park in Omaha. You don't even have to, go to another state or cross a river or anything like that. Right here in town, no matter if you're in Omaha or Lincoln, you can place your bets at Warhorse Sportsbook. Maybe you didn't get your Masters bets in early for the futures. Maybe you want to see what the live lines are now that we know Scotty Scheffler might be bailing to go have a baby at any point. Who knows? Or maybe you want to hit up some UFC 300 like we just talked to our guy B. Edwards about. You can bet on nearly every major sporting event at Warhorse Sportsbook. Go to warhorsecasino.com/sportsbook for a full list of house rules and details. That's Warhorse Sportsbook. No bets, no glory. DB.
What up?
Oh, nothing. Just doing a little radio show here.
How are things?
I'm doing all right.
By the way, real quick, it seems like that has happened before.
Bruntz is hilarious, by the way.
What'd he do?
Oh, he kind of went in depth about the Ohio State guys tracking.
Oh, yeah.
Sears. I would have probably laughed. And some of it is Bruntz's delivery. But
Yeah.
I'm sure he's like retelling exactly how it happened.
Yeah.
And I'm laughing to myself.
It's amusing for you.
Yeah. Plus I think he's funny.
What's up, Shane?
What's up, Shane?
I was just going to say, it seems like that has happened before where I want to say it happened during one of the Super Bowls where their wife was getting ready to have a baby and they decided to be in the Super Bowl instead. It seems like
It's not uncommon.
It's not
No,
uncommon.
There was a Rams receiver, Van or Vaughn or I think he's number 12.
Jefferson.
Yeah. He found out right after a game, like the reporter told him he was having a baby, so he pieced out.
Yeah.
RG3, I think, from the national championship game.
That's a famous one.
Where he goes sprinting off.
That's probably what I was thinking.
And he goes, "I'm having a baby." And
That's
just,
a famous one.
runs. So I mean, but we've also seen where guys are like, yeah, she's having a baby. I'm gonna hit it up after the game. Like we're gonna.
To say that you're ahead of time. That, I'll be out.
I'm just saying that's easy to say on a Wednesday. Yeah, on the weekend with a lead, that's a lot harder to
When
say.
you're like, wait, what's that jacket size again?
Ooh, I'm a 44 long. Is
that thing's already waiting for me?
Ooh, I remember the last one fit pretty nice.
How many of these guys have multiple? What do I have
Not a
another
lot.
crack at?
Not a lot. That's what I'm like. I mean, listen, I'm gonna say something here.
Well, we know you don't like kids. It doesn't count. It's
And
fine.
and how long is the window going to be open for you to get one of these?
True. I'm gonna say this. Harder to win a Masters than it is to have a baby.
Oh no.
A lot of people without any talent in the world have a baby.
Oh no.
A lot of dumb, unskilled people have babies.
No disrespect to couples that are struggling to have kids. I apologize on Ravi's behalf.
Listen, I understand there is a struggle sometimes, and it's really unfortunate for those people, and I feel for them.
So a green jacket wouldn't be a tough hang for you?
I don't know if green's my color, but I'm much more likely to put on a green jacket than I am to have a child.
Poor Meredith. They've only been married this is like 4 years.
It's fine. Is this their first kid?
I don't want to speculate, but I assume so.
Well, that's the only way this even makes a little sense if it's the first one.
What if he just wants to be with his wife?
Listen, she knows what job he has. Right? Like, no, I'm serious.
The guy without the family is the family spokesman.
I've got a family.
Scotty Scheffler.
No. I've got a family. Right. I just don't have children. There's a difference.
There we go. Okay.
Okay. So here's the thing, though, is my wife knows
what
I do.
She knows
what I do for a living, right?
Yes.
So she knows Saturdays in the fall, not really an option for anything. Don't really have a lot of leeway there. Because that's a critical part of the job function. You know what's a critical part of a job for a golfer? Going to play in the Masters,
Do you
right?
think,
going to play in the majors.
Do you think they would let him Zoom it if that was happening, like when he was?
No, you can't have your phone.
Yeah, but I mean, special circumstance like this.
I mean, they did have a special circumstance to let Tiger on the golf course before any black people were allowed there. So it's not the first time they would make an exception for a golfer.
Does it seem like he has more than one major?
I would have thought so. Yeah, because he's playing really, really well right now, and B, he's kind of been in these favorite spots in terms of betting odds. It seems like a lot in the last 2 years.
Do you know when he turned pro?
2022?
18.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't start winning until 2022.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wonder what happened in those 4 years. I'm just curious. Like, he must have got a lot better.
Well, golf is hard.
Golf is hard.
Golf is hard.
He got a couple Corn Ferry wins in there.
But I think he finished, I don't know, he was in the top 10 and 21 in the Open. I think it was tied for something, maybe 7th or 8th.
Yeah.
So it was 2.5 short years before he experienced his first top 10 finish on the tour.
I'm just saying 7 billion people in the world have been either the result of or actively involved in a birth. How many majors winners do we have? How many Masters winners do we have?
Are you just playing the numbers game?
Yeah, I mean, it's harder. It's harder to do.
I don't know Miss Scooter or Scudder, however you pronounce it. I'm sure she's Scheffler now. At least she didn't have to change her initials. That's a bonus.
That helps. I'm just, it's a lot harder to win a Masters than have a baby.
I'm up 4 strokes. It's 1:30, and you're getting ready to hear the beautiful voice come on.
The Jim Nance.
Yeah, tradition like no other. Sunday in Augusta. And he's like,
on Amen Corner.
And you're like, hey, man, there's a golf cart without a governor that's going about 46 mile an hour up to the clubhouse. Oh, look, that's Scotty Scheffler with a 4-hole lead. He's out.
I'm just saying, it's really easy to say on a Wednesday.
Hey, how would you feel?
It's really easy to say on a Wednesday.
If you're like, Wyndham Clark or Joaquin Neiman or somebody, and you're 4 strokes down through 8 on Sunday, and he bounces and you're the winner.
You know how I would
you're
feel?
gonna wear that thing proudly?
100%.
Oh God.
100. You know why? Because I was dedicated to the game and he wasn't.
There we go.
Because I was all in and he wasn't. Hey, what's that thing we keep saying, right? Hey, half of it's just showing up.
So
you just got to keep showing up.
You just rocked the jacket?
1,000%.
Oh, man.
Without a doubt. I don't care if I'm getting in on a technicality. I don't care at all.
Would you name your jacket Scotty?
I would name it after whatever he names his kid that he thought was more important than the Masters.
Wow.
Listen, I'm just saying, if I'm Wyndham Clark, I'm wearing that thing loud and proud. Because guess what? In 5 years, nobody's going to remember the circumstances. Not a soul.
Yeah, they will.
No, they won't. No, they won't. Nobody except for me remembers that Steph Curry's first title at Golden State happened with Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving both out against Cleveland. Guess what? Nobody cares anymore.
I guarantee you sometime on Sunday morning for like the next 35 years, that'll be like a 10 or 15-minute segment before the Masters finals. That'll be Scotty Scheffler.
100% not.
Hole 16 in the golf cart without the governor racing up to
max. It gets remembered for 10 years. Tops. 5 years from now, nobody's talking about this. Nobody cares. Like, Wyndham Clark, Masters champion.
I don't know, but do you know what I did last night until roughly 2 a.m? I watched like the Players Championship where Hal Sutton held off Tiger. I watched his final round over Bob May in the playoffs. Like I went back and I don't know if that's true or not. So I'm holding. I don't know if that's true yet. I'm waiting.
So when he does that, or they just and if he's already hit the ball, will they just leave it there? I mean, do they, out of respect, will his ball just stay there on the course until he comes back to finish up the round?
I don't know. What I do know is this: if I'm the guy who wins because Scotty Scheffler couldn't keep his eye on the prize, I'm wearing that jacket with pride. Guess what? My name goes up on that wall just like everybody else's does. The other thing, if I'm Scotty Scheffler and my wife is insisting that I'm present for the birth of a child and I lose several $1 million and an opportunity for my second major, might be a little resentment there long term. I'd have a hard time. Like that's almost a no-win situation for both of them.
Can he zoom it on like a watch or something like that, like the Apple Watch? I mean, since you can't have your phone,
I don't think you can have any of that stuff, Shane.
I still
what
can't
about the
believe
glasses?
you would like gladly get fitted for the coat.
Oh, without a doubt. Hey, what do we keep saying? Just keep showing up. If Scotty Scheffler doesn't show up, I'm going to show up. If I'm Wyndham Clark or if I'm Matsuyama or whoever you like.
We have to check the accuracy of a tweet that just came out.
Yeah,
we could potentially
might have a little breaking
news.
Give me a couple seconds here while we pay the bills. We're going to check on something here. We might have some breaking news on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Did she have the baby already?
I'm Ravi, Lulla. If she did,
that ain't it.
That'd be hilarious, though. Easier to leave now than with a lead on Sunday.
Wow.
We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube here at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill from the Pillar Exterior stage. So we were able to...
Hello, Pillar.
That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla.
What's up?
We were able to confirm the breaking news we hinted at before the last break, and that is that one O.J. Simpson has passed away. As of yesterday, it looks like his family put out a tweet from his account that he succumbed to his cancer that he had been fighting, which I didn't realize he had. Apparently on a Google search, there was a couple reports about it, but
prostate cancer a couple months ago.
Yep.
But man, he must have really let that.
They must have found
that
it
late in the game.
Yeah, because now, thankfully, prostate cancer has become pretty treatable.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be a huge issue and one of the number one causes of death for men in that age group. Luckily, that's usually no longer the case. But if he wasn't able to get on top of it in time, obviously, it can still be very, very serious. And I don't know if it was that, if it spread, whatever. Obviously, we don't know the details there, but O.J. Simpson is dead as of yesterday, according to his own Twitter account, a message from his family. So I know he's a very strange figure in our history as a country, just because of all the different stories that go along with him. Like, he's a really weird like there's certain people when they pass that they're very difficult to
eulogize.
Yeah, to kind of put a bow on their life, right? Because that's what we kind of tend to do here. Is like,
well, especially as men, right? Like,
yeah,
not just that he's polarizing because of the alleged the the alleged charges and him being in prison, but men typically don't get their flowers while they're alive anyway.
Yeah.
Right. And people will spend their 9 minutes saying something good about you when they could have checked on you
anytime
over however long you were alive. But
yes,
that's just typically what we do.
Yeah. And that's, obviously a whole other issue in its own right. But so that's all I really have to say about that. I don't really.
Ooh, you Forrest Robbie Gump?
That's all I got to say about that.
My Jenny.
Used to be I ran to get where I was going. Never thought it'd take me anywhere.
Wow.
I actually really like Forrest Gump.
That thing wet.
It is maybe the most unintentionally funny movie of all time.
Can you do the dorm room scene again? I know Shane could do that. I'm sorry.
Mom, get my nuts. Get my nuts.
So for me personally, I wouldn't leave the Masters if I was having a kid.
I'm too exhausted from being amazing yesterday.
No, so I do need to. So I'm gonna change gears here. O.J. Simpson's dead. That's the news we had to break. I'm gonna ignore everything happening on that side of the table for now.
I like turtles.
I made a joke about Tiger Woods and Augusta National being a little bit racist or whatever. And of course, because Twitter is what Twitter does.
Shane, did Hootie call Ravi?
There are dark forces within.
That was Gandalf, I think.
I thought it was
really
Morgan.
You go.
I thought it was Morgan Freeman, and I almost said Ned, but that would be Unforgiven. And I was just like,
I'm almost positive that was Gandalf. Did you hit me with that? Because I'm talking about Tiger Woods. You go dark forces, really, Shane? Is that what's happening?
Oh, don't get me started on that this morning.
Is that what's happening right now? I say we're talking about black people playing at the Masters, and you're like, there's dark forces on the moon.
Now, that's a little bit of a mental gymnastics. Way to weave that in, closet.
Closet what?
You seem very hurt right now.
Wow.
Closet nerd because I like Lord of the Rings. Love Lord of the Rings. That's not closet. I'm a huge dork. No.
Do you smell?
So I'm making jokes about how Augusta National is a little bit racist, and then of course the actually crowd chimes in. Well, Calvin Pete played 8 times in the 80s, and
now how do you know that's their voice?
Well, because every well actually
I defended. I said I thought you were being sarcastic.
I was making it. Listen, if you come to this program for your informative purposes, you got a problem. I'm mostly here just to make jokes. DB might inform you occasionally.
Wow, backhanded. So right now, this last 3 minutes, I feel there's a lot going on here with some backhanded innuendos.
Who, me?
No, the other guy.
I'm not the dark forces at work over here, guy.
Man, I feel great, man. I know I'm going to Disneyland.
Got a couple minorities, and Shane's like, there's dark forces at work. Yeah,
I am bad, and they know I'm bad.
It's called The Radio Show, Shane.
Oh, man.
To this day.
I'm just saying. I think if you expect me to be,
I can't even read this text. What is wrong with people?
I'm gonna tell you right now, live on television.
If you expect me to be your Encyclopedia Britannica and to be like, well, I know that Lee Elder was actually the first.
Why the voice though? Why the voice? Like, what is going on?
That's the well actually guy voice. And like, I don't know what to tell you. I was making a joke that Augusta National's racist. That's it. That was the whole bit.
Oh,
I wasn't.
You're mad.
Exactly. He's totally lost it these last 4 minutes.
It's ridiculous.
If you got a lead on Sunday at the Masters, you can't leave to have a kid. I'm sorry. Hashtag sorry, not sorry. And you bet your ass if I'm Wyndham Clark, I am getting that jacket fitted like I was leading pole to pole. I don't listen. There was I think it was the 1904 Olympics.
Oh,
like one guy finished that marathon. Everybody else, guess what? He still got a gold medal, and I would wear that thing proudly. Some guy came over.
A huge waste of time.
Some guy came over from Russia with no food, and basically he was wearing like slacks and Oxford shoes, trying to run this marathon. And I think he accidentally ingested some arsenic, and I think he got second.
Are you not entertained?
Just keep showing up, DB. You get yourself a gold medal. You get yourself a green jacket. And guess what? It all counts the same.
Oh, man.
No asterisks in these record books, baby. None.
Ooh.
So what if it's like on the last hole, like on Saturday, and he leaves and he doesn't play 18?
Why are you putting the quarter in?
Doesn't love the game.
I mean,
I'm just curious.
Does he just get a standard?
Do you need kerosene?
Does he get like 10 strokes on him and then he
Doesn't
can just play on
love
Sunday?
the game.
Or does
Doesn't love the game.
Or does he have to finish the round out? Because he
not committed.
In theory, he could come back and tally up the scorecard like the next day.
Distracted.
Hey, you know what mean insensitive person would probably finish? Dan Hurley. Dan Hurley would finish.
Well, probably because he's apparently got the most complicated offense in the history of mankind. So he'd have to finish because nobody else could possibly figure out how to run a motion offense.
Oh,
I think I figured out the problem with that since we're just doing all the things that I'm mad about today. I think I figured out the issue that people have with not understanding that his offense isn't that complicated. If you look at his offense and go, those are sets and set plays, then it is incredibly complicated. But I'm almost positive it's motion offense, right? So it looks complicated because they've got all these different looking things. And they're like, oh, he's got the deepest playbook in the world. And it's like, nope, they run motion. It's called a motion offense. It's going to look a lot different a lot of times. Sometimes it's going to look simple. And then I saw some guy, I think it was Ryan Cassidy on Twitter. I think he does some big East Coast nation bias, whatever it is. And he goes, it's the deepest, most complex playbook I've ever seen. But against Purdue, he went really simple. It's like, no, Purdue didn't defend it well, so they were able to do the first read.
Hello, friend.
It's called the motion offense. You read, and then you react. If they don't defend it well, then it looks like you're running simple stuff because it's your first read. It's like a quarterback when you're reading a defense. If your first guy is always open, doesn't really look that complex, does it?
And still somehow they only shot 45% from the floor. And 6 of 22.
Most
3.
complex offense I've ever seen in my life.
I do want to know if you're going to be okay.
I'm fine.
I'm
fine.
You seem very hurt right now. You're gonna be all right.
I know I'm getting because of the last 2 minutes there. I know I'm gonna get in the group text, and they just keep sending me Twitter videos of people saying, "Look how complex this offense is." And I go, I didn't reach my opinion because I hadn't seen it, right?
Oh,
I care about you. Here's some pine cones on a stick.
Yeah, exactly. I want to go get you some pine.
Screen, cut, counter. That's it. That's the whole offense. Sometimes it gets initiated with the ball screen. Sometimes it gets initiated with the dribble handoff. And that's about it.
I'm not going to die on this hill, but I will say this. I do think
that I'm 100% unequivocally right.
I do think I don't love the screen grabs to validate because I think a lot of times people gravitate towards low-hanging fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Look no further than the quarterback discussion we've had over the last couple of days.
Yep.
Somebody says it looks a certain way. We regurgitate it without really looking at what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So that can definitely be a thing. I'm not saying it's in this case.
Oh, no, these are videos. They're sending me videos.
But just because people do that doesn't make it true. It just means of the 30 people that you may grab it from, there may be another 300 that don't agree. 30 could seem like a lot.
I've got some video or some audio
Yeah.
of when Scotty leaves and Ravi's out there.
Like you're winning. You're winning it like you're winning.
No, he's not winning at life because he's leaving. I'm just saying, 4 of the video clips were just Alex Caravan slipping screens. That's all it was. It's just like, hey, I'm about to set the screen. They overplayed it. JK, I'm going to the hoop. And they get layups. And they're like, oh, my God. It's the most complex offense I've ever seen in my life. It's a slip screen.
Why are those guys in your fringe group?
I don't know. I don't know why they like me, honestly. I like them because they're pretty cool, but I'm kind of a jerk, so I don't really know. I don't know why a lot of people talk to me, to be honest. But I do know now.
You would wear that coat with pride.
But just like the green jacket, baby. I do know now, though, thank you, that Tiger Woods wasn't the first black man to play Augusta. So we learned that on the show today. Also, O.J. Simpson's dead. R.I.P. That's TV. I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll probably be back tomorrow. It's hard to say. It's Hurrdat Sports Radio.